Hi, and welcome to another episode of the n8n Spotlight, an initiative from the n8n community giving you insights about product updates, news, and community builds. I'm Mario, and this is my co-host Bram. Let's start with the product updates. Bram, would you like to kick off this one with some highlights?
Yeah, of course. Let's have a look at some of the awesome new features that we got. n8n is offering a registered community edition. You can apply for that through the normal licensing part of n8n. You can simply click on in log, and then you get this screen, and then you just fill in your email address, and you will get a license. It does not, of course, have all the features that you can have with, for example, an enterprise edition, but it has some awesome features. So first of all, you have the history of a workflow. So you can go back in time for your workflow just to a previous version of it, which is quite nice. It does only go back 24 hours, but that should be fine for basic development work, of course. We also have this execution data function where you can save data to the execution so you can easily filter it out. So for example, we have spotlight number 2. I executed that a little bit earlier. So we could go to spotlight number 2. And then we see that there was an execution with spotlight number 2, which is quite awesome. If you, for example, put an ID field in there or whatever, you can just search the ID of the data that's went through the execution. So if you need to debug or something like that, you can actually go back to the execution very easily. There's also the possibility of easily getting the data from an execution inside your editor. So you could, for example, if you have a thing here and then you say copy to editor, then it just moves the data from the execution to the editor, which makes it a lot easier to debug stuff. Also, the deduplicate node got modified. There's a lot more cool features with it now. So you can still do the same things as you could do before, but now we also have this feature where we can check the executions that came before this execution. So for example, if you have a synchronization between two applications, you can make sure that you do not sync the same value twice. Before we had to store the information externally, for example, and then you could check if the thing already passed. But now n8n can store it for you. There's a couple of options here, so you can just check the value, or you can check if it's higher than the previous. For example, if you have an incremental number, you can also check those. And also a date, which is quite nice to have. So you can just do it by date and nothing is being processed double, which is very important with production workflows. And you can also just delete the history. You can save the values per node or per workflow, which is quite nice to have that flexibility. And it just makes things a lot easier. And it's all in one node, which is very powerful. GitHub has some workflow features where you can chain actions together to do some automations in GitHub. The GitHub node now has the option to actually start those workflows. So the workflows will be triggered from n8n with whatever input you want. And then GitHub will perform all kinds of actions that are listed within that workflow. You can, of course, also look at the workflows that are there or enable them and stuff like that, which makes it a lot easier to use those GitHub workflows together with n8n. And of course, all the other automation that you do can still stay in n8n, which is quite nice. Mario, you also have some new features you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I would like to start with the Nodes as a Tools feature, which we were talking about in the last episode, and it got released right after that. So now, additionally to the HTTP request tools, now you have regular tools which you can add. And there is already a list of supported ones here. It's like about 20 nodes you can select. They work a little bit different from the HTTP request node because here you had to use the placeholder definitions to pass in data from the AI. This is handled a bit differently now. You have this from AI function, which simplifies the process so you can call this function wherever you like, wherever you want to insert data from the AI. The only thing you have to really specify is a key, so the name of a variable which AI is referencing to. And you can also give it a description so the AI knows a bit better about that, the default value, and a type if you want to. But these are all optional. If you want to read more about this, check out this awesome post from Jim. He wrote a quite decent post about how these nodes as a tool work. Also, if you're a nodes creator, check out this. You can turn your custom nodes into AI usable tools with this single option. So if you set usable as tool is true, then when deployed, you should find the nodes in this list as well. Other than that, the Gmail node got an update, which is send and wait for approval. This allows you to build a workflow which can send an email where the user has to approve something, and the workflow is waiting until then. So let me test it real quick. So if we run this, you see the node is waiting, and I get a new email. And the email says that I can approve it. And if I approve it, then the node has finished. There is also options to not only approve, but also to disapprove. And what you also can see is that the return value of the node says that approved is true. So that's the value which came from the form sent with the mail. This feature is also available for Slack. Same thing, just different provider. The OpenAI message assistant now got a new option. Instead of using memory connector, you can define a thread ID instead. And under the hood, the tools agent got a bit more context for the chat memory. So earlier, if you would, for example, create a task using a prompt, the intent was stored in the chat memory would only have bare minimum of information, like here task creation or sharing information about a created task. And with the update now, the memory knows a bit more about the tasks. So if you build more complex prompts, the chat memory has more information about the past, and that can generate more accurate results. Then there's also a new feature about forms. So you might be familiar with the form trigger node, but it was always at the beginning of a workflow, so it was quite limited. So that's why a new node got added, which is the next form page, which you can build multiforms with. And it's not just a simple multiform, because you can also build quite complex things with it, because right between those nodes, you can put technically anything you like, and it can also take time. So let me show maybe an example of this. So this is a workflow which allows you to import workflows from other n8n instances. And as you can see, it starts, of course, with a form trigger node, but then we have some logic in between, and then the next form page comes in, and then some more logic, and it can branch out as you wish. So if I just test it quickly, you can maybe see at the beginning, regular form, and then the node is waiting until the user fills out the next form, continue, and it goes like this until the end. And there is also a node for building form endings, so you can build a complete or error message, which just shows up without any further options. Another thing which got added is a new canvas. So it's the editor you're building the workflows in. And there is a new version of it, which is currently in alpha phase. So you can test it, give feedback. And what actually got improved is the overall performance for large workflows. Then you also have a mini map at the bottom left, as you can see. So you have a better orientation if you have very huge workflows. It shows nodes and also the notes where they are. And there is a new button for reporting bugs, which redirects you to the GitHub page. So if you find anything, you can report it right from there. One more tiny detail, if you have a tools agent connected with a OpenAI model, then tools are not required anymore. I would also like to give a tip for the canvas, which I just recently discovered randomly, which is that it depends where you click on the canvas if you want to add or copy or paste nodes, that it makes a difference. So if I click, for example, down here and I add a new Notion node, then it gets added right there. And if I copy it and maybe let's say click up here, it gets pasted right there. And also, if a node is selected and I add a new node, it gets connected automatically. So this should come in handy if you're building your workflows. So Bram, let's maybe then switch to the community builds. Would you like to start on that?
Yeah. So we found a community node for Notify. This platform allows you to easily send notifications to your PC or your phone. And with this community node, everything is, of course, a lot easier to use it. So we are very excited that this community node was made. So we can easily use Notify in our workflows to send notifications and stuff like that. If you want to know more about Notify itself, Oscar made a video about that, which you can check out and then, of course, use this community node. And I think Mario also has an awesome community node for you. Let's have a look at that.
Yeah, right. There is a community node for Notion. Maybe if you have worked with these blocks of Notion pages before, that's quite a pain to work with these in n8n because they are split out into items and there's so much information, but you do not have the real content you can work with easily. And that's where this community node comes in handy because it can convert those blocks into Markdown. So maybe it's a bit hard to see, but here, for example, there is a dash which indicates that this is a bullet point. The only thing you have to do is to aggregate the items into one single one so you can pass in the entire array of objects right in here. Same goes the other way as well. If we have a markdown file, it can be converted into these blocks very easily by just inputting the markdown file, and it generates these blocks we can then use to create blocks in Notion dynamically. So there is no more need to use a code tool to complicatedly build these blocks and combine them, since the Notion nodes only allow for static assignment of these blocks. The only thing we will just hope for is that the aggregate function will be someday integrated into the community node as well, so it saves us this one step. So with this, let's wrap up for today. All the referred topics you can find as links in the description down below. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more of this, and see you next time.
Bye.